Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
And what's it gonna do?
It doesn't matter how you're doing. Woo! Wheeling dealing. Limousine right. Jet flag.
Can you dig it, sucker?
Would you please shut the hell up?
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
The cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the human rumble.
What up, what up? Welcome to episode 149 of Keep the Kayfabe. I'm Mike, sitting here with my boys, ready to talk some wrestling. And yeah, boys and girls, and people listening worldwide to Keep the Kayfabe, the Royal Rumble was this past week, and we had a major injury suffered in it. We'll get to the results of the Royal Rumble itself, but lots of news happening, and if you're living under a rock or not keeping yourself rocked hard, or a Triple H, as we like to say on Keep the Kayfabe here, you might not have heard about Vince McMahon being outed for his antics on treatment of man. I always get to like Austin Powers quotes, like they're treating objects like women, or isn't that a line from Austin Powers? I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Okay, well, it was pretty disgusting. We're gonna get to that, and then also we have to announce the winner of the game from last week's episode, the promo game, Keep the Kayfabe style. Super fun episode. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen, and then we will reveal the results at the end of the show. So let's get to introducing who we are talking with tonight. He's over in Bayview. He's a man that keeps it freshly squeezed. His name is Matt Michelson, and if you are not familiar, last week's episode, we're going to have Matt talk about a random object in the voice of the Big Velvoski to introduce himself tonight. And tonight's word is rivers. So what do you say, Val?
Oh my God. Hello, ladies. The Big Valboski's here tonight to talk about rivers. Rivers, as you know, flow long and deep and every which direction. And when the Big Valboski's around, the river never runs dry.
That was good. That was good.
Boy, oh boy. Yeah.
That was
good
great.
Job.
That was good.
Yeah, not an easy thing.
The only thing I'm missing is the saxophone, but otherwise, I think we're on to something here.
Well, I could actually get some saxophone music maybe for next week. I'll try to get his theme music and drop it in. That would be a lot more editing. You might have to pay me, Matt. You might have to pay me per week to have that kind of editing in, but we can work that out.
I'm sure we can figure something out.
Okay, good. Because I want to get my money back for the money that I dropped on 2 books today.
Yes.
I didn't finish Gemini Girl yet because I just haven't had time. And I knew Steve had his second book come out, The Divided Man. So I was like, well, I'll order that when I finish Gemini Girl. Well, the third book rolled around. And what's that book called?
The Gorgon Void.
The Gorgon Void.
Okay, so it's a hard word to say, so that's why it slipped my mind, but I put both books in my cart today, and they will be sent to my house, because this is how much of a freak I am, because Lit MKE, me, a candle maker who recycles beer bottles, cans, and liquor bottles into candles, is such a recycling freak. I wanted both books be delivered in one box by one trip by an Amazon driver.
Well,
so
aren't you
just doing
Captain Green?
I'm fucking trying. All right. So, and you all can too. So, anywho, awesome. Well, good to see you tonight, Matt. I really appreciate you here tonight. Let's go over to the man with the golden pipes, Gary Williams. How are we, Gary?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, this week, I'm introducing to everyone a new little thing for not only my intro, but also, as many of you know, a little bit of my desire of and love of the history of wrestling. So this week, so as part of my intro every week, I'm going to also share with all of you some very special birthdays. So we're going to call this the Keep the Kayfabe birthday shout out. So here are some of our favorite wrestlers that were born this week during the calendar year. So on January 28th, Sheamus celebrated his birthday, the great Scotsman. So, oh no, my bad. He's not from Scotland. That's Drew McIntyre, isn't it? The Irishman, Sheamus. On the 29th, Hardcore Holly was born. Hardcore was a very prominent wrestler.
NASCAR racer.
Yes.
NASCAR racer.
That's right. That's right. January 30th, as I sang the intro music for her, was Becky Lynch's birthday. So Becky Lynch was born on the 30th.
Is she Scottish or Irish?
Irish.
She's Irish, yes.
Okay. So we got 2 Irish birthdays.
2 Irish birthdays, and then some others to round out this week. Happy birthday to I believe tomorrow to Ronda Rousey, and then on the 2nd to the Machine, Brian Cage, who did a run-in tonight on Dynamite. And then on the 3rd, Matt and Mike, you are going to be excited to know that not only was Haku born that day, not only was Kevin Von Erich born that day, but on February 3rd, your favorite and mine, Marty Jannetty will be celebrating a birthday. Can you only imagine what that birthday party will look like?
Jeez, I can't even imagine how he would celebrate. Shout out to Marty, though, friend of the show.
Friend of the show. So
I hope he wrestled in Milwaukee and stayed at the Genie Inn for his birthday at least one of his years.
Did you guys ever hear you hear about the story where he kind of like kayfabe? Well, they're not sure, but he talked about killing somebody, and then he was just like, "Oh, I was just joking."
Yeah,
I heard that again. Whether it was, I think, late last week, and it just when I saw his name, I was just like, that guy is just a train wreck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what more can you say that he hasn't himself already said? And for those of our listeners who maybe don't know exactly what we're talking about, go back and check out, I think it's episode 129, where we actually interview Marty Jannetty along with Greg the Hammer Valentine and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Greg and Marty and Ted all tell some really fascinating stories, Marty in particular. So if you want more inside baseball on what we're talking about, go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a tormented soul. I don't know if I would ever, if there would be an amount of money that could be paid to me to trade places with Marty Jannetty. I just don't want to live in the man's head. He's obviously, tormented, done a lot of drugs. He's done a lot of things, made a lot of decisions. But we wish him well. He's a friend of the show. He was nice enough to grace up his time, and he's, shout out to Marty. Keep hanging in there, buddy. Keep it Triple H, my friend. All right. So who wasn't really keeping it very hard was someone's body when they got... How did this happen, guys? I didn't get a chance to read the article on how CM Punk got injured. Did he get thrown out of the ring and he didn't land properly? Or
no?
What's going on? Where is the injury and how long will he be out?
Yeah. So during the Royal Rumble match, Punk came in as number 27. He was in the match, I think, for about 20 minutes total. I don't know at what point this was, like, time-wise. I'm sure somebody could check this if they wanted to. But at some point, Drew McIntyre gave him a Future Shock DDT, which is basically an underhook double arm DDT. And when he did that, Punk tore one of his triceps. I think it's his right arm. And you could tell, like, if you go back and watch it, the moment he hits the mat and kind of flops over, he grabs his tricep. And I mean, a lot of times as wrestling fans, you can tell when something's a work and when it's a shoot. And it was definitely a shoot injury right away. But despite that, he went on, worked the rest of the match, had, the final segment with Cody. I don't know if it's been released yet as to whether or not it was originally intended for Punk to have won the Rumble or Cody to have won the Rumble, and maybe they, called it in the ring because of the injury. But yeah, the DDT is ultimately what resulted in him tearing his tricep. Supposedly he's going to be out for about 9 months. So if you watch Raw this week, he came out and basically said, yeah, not this year at WrestleMania, maybe next year. It's really a disappointment. And we'll go into this in a little more detail. And Gary, of course, I'll let you get your thoughts here in a second. But I think one of the things I, as a fan, was really looking forward to was the card for this year's WrestleMania was shaping up to be just insanely good. Obviously, a lot of rumors have been circulating about The Rock being involved in the main event with Roman Reigns. That would then leave maybe Punk to wrestle Cody in a match at WrestleMania, which I think as an AEW fan, who wouldn't want that? Mm-hmm. And then you also have all these other great main event level guys in their own feuds kind of spinning off of this. So initially, I think that was the plan. This week on Raw, we saw Cody come out, talk to Seth about potentially wrestling Seth for the World Heavyweight Championship. I think that's a really good idea. It still leaves a gap for The Rock to insert himself in again in the match against Roman. But man, Punk leaves a huge hole in the card. It's a real disappointment. But I'll pause there because obviously we could go on about this all day. Gary, I'll let you chime in here with your thoughts too.
I really like a lot of what you said, Matt, and I think the hardest part there's two things that I share disappointment in as well that are similar but a little different from yours. One of the disappointments I have is just in CM Punk in general. It just is like there just appears to be a black cloud over this guy's head. And I don't understand. Like, I get the allure, I get the attraction, I get all of it, but as a wrestling purist like I am, it's like, how many times is a guy going to have to get injured over the course of the last, 12 months, even longer? I mean, he has been injured more than he's been in the ring. And it comes to a point where you just ask yourself, like, what is going on here? Like,
is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And, so then you just get into all those layers of just, is he really, really good for the WWE? I mean, they're expending a ton of money in a guy to sit on the sidelines again. And, and so for me, that's part of the disappointment. I do want to agree with you also, though, on my other disappointment, which is, you're right. I thought WrestleMania could have been just a jacked card, and here we have these massive holes that they're trying to fill. And I feel like I know WWE enough to know that they didn't necessarily have a super great plan B, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see what these next couple weeks look like as they're pivoting, because there are huge holes. Charlotte got injured previously, Seth Rollins, now Punk, and just, and the whole wild card of what is The Rock's plan. I mean, a lot of that is still fascinating, but I really, it just, this injury kind of, you're right. I had not thought about what you said, though, and I think it's really fascinating to think, was that actually the ending? Like, I don't know if any of us are going to ever know the truth behind that, but was that supposed to be the ending?
I don't know. Hard to say. And as Steve said, who is not here, Cody is in some rare air to go back-to-back Rumble champions. Has that ever happened?
It has.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Stone Cold Steve Austin's won the Rumble 3 times. I don't know if he's won it back-to-back. Gary, you might know more about this, but I think Brock Lesnar might have also done it.
Yeah.
It went back-to-back?
Possibly.
I mean, back-to-back is big. That's an investment.
That's huge.
It is huge.
So, I mean, okay, so you just said those two names. Stone Cold Steve Austin, probably the greatest of all time, arguably. He's on the Rushmore, at least. And then 2, you got
No,
Brock Lesnar.
It looks like Cody Rhodes might be the only one.
Yeah, so there you go. So you said Brock Lesnar, who is supposed to be like this unstoppable killer of like almost the past ish 15 at least. And then there's Cody Rhodes, the guy who you was Stardust, had to jump go somewhere else to prove like, yes, I am like who I say I am, and then go back to WWE, turn your back on the indie, which is crazy move, but look at him. He just won 2 back-to-back Royal Rumbles, and he is getting all the pyrotechnics, he's getting the wardrobe, he's getting the shine. Like, I still remember our group chat when it first happened. We were just like, wow, that was something. And we are seeing it played out for the past 2 years now. So
Mike,
you gotta respect
I want to correct myself real quick. So I was able to pull this up. Actually, Shawn Michaels, turns out, won back-to-back Royal Rumbles, 1995, 1996. And then the next 2 years were Stone Cold Steve Austin. So those, just at a quick glance, it looks like those were the only other 2 guys who won back-to-back Rumbles. So yeah, Cody's in that league with Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold.
You know, another
Stardust
thing,
could have never done this. Stardust could never won 2 back-to-back Rumbles. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I wonder.
Even though he's the same guy. Sorry
Maybe.
to pull back the curtain for everybody.
Sure? Matt, I wonder with what you pulled up, you know, a stat that I wonder about is how many Royal Rumble winners won at WrestleMania.
Oh, great question. I don't know. I'd have to do a little more digging.
Yeah, I would be curious because it's almost like is it almost an automatic to some degree? Well, I guess last year it wasn't, right? So there's one of them because Cody lost. But it would be curious to know how many, won at WrestleMania.
Mm.
Fascinating.
That would be a great question. And maybe you'll hear it on next week's episode of Keep the Kayfabe for that juicy bit of information. We will get our intern to work on it for us. But so we said there was a lot of holes in the WWE roster now with CM Punk getting injured. Well, there was a lot of holes in this next story with Vince McMahon. He was basically outed for some text messages, explained some pretty graphic details when I was mentioning these holes before. And to be quite honest, it's kind of crazy to see how far a man can be in a position of power of what he has and what he works so hard to build. And you can see that the product has slipped over the past couple of years. I mean, we talk about it a lot. We can focus on it more, but over the past, 10 years, I'd say fairly, it's not the same product. And this is kind of the time frame when this next story was all going down. This guy was basically organizing some sex trafficking and getting into conversations with, multiple females. He actually had a big documentary supposed to be released on his, glory and how awesome he was in this story. But I think as time went on and these people that were making this documentary discovered that this guy isn't actually a very good guy, and they actually pulled the documentary from Netflix, which showed the last dance for Michael Jordan. It was supposed to be one of these things. So it's pretty freaking monumental that this story came out. Wrestling's never really going to be the same, to be quite honest, because the ringmaster of the circus itself has resigned from TKO. And it didn't happen right away. It took kind of a while. So yeah, we were just talking off air last week about Secession, the show. This is a mogul that has dirt on him that I don't think can be scrubbed from the internet. And his position, the board, direction of wrestling, creative, all his fingerprints are basically going to be scrubbed, because I don't know how you come back from this. So
yeah, I don't think you do. So for those of our listeners who haven't heard this story, I'll try and sum it up as succinctly as I can, because there's been new information coming out every day, and it's been about a week now. But basically, what's happening is, if you haven't heard, Vince McMahon hired someone. I want to say it was just as recent as a couple of years ago. She lived in the same apartment building as him. A friend of hers mentioned Vince, introduced the two of them. Vince then brought her in. I can't recall off the top of my head what her role was within the company, but essentially things started to get weird when she went over to Vince's place. He said, yeah, come on in. He's in his closet in his underwear. And then things escalated from there, right? Now, at that point, Vince basically had her sign an NDA that she wouldn't disclose any of this to anyone. And this isn't the first time that Vince has had someone sign an NDA for this kind of thing. In fact, it was, I just heard this like very recently within the week. This year, or I want to say this year or last year, Joe Biden actually signed a new act that illegalizes NDAs for any sort of sexual assault crime. So if you were forced to sign an NDA for sexual assault, after 2022, I believe it is, it's not valid. Which is crazy to think, right? That this day and age we live in, that's the case. But regardless of all that, things keep escalating. This woman, by the way, the woman that we're talking about, her parents had just died before meeting Vince. She had also filed for bankruptcy. So she was in a really tough spot, which Vince naturally took advantage of. And from there, once these two start having a relationship, she can't tell anyone about it. Vince takes it up a notch and starts, for the lack of a better word, like promoting her within the backstage area of the company. It just, you can kind of tell what's going on here, right? And I don't want to go into too much detail. If you want all the nitty gritty of it, you can Google it. You can read the text messages between the two of them on the internet,
it's
which
bad.
By the way, the fact,
it's really bad.
I know. And
it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I said this earlier today, and typically we're very lighthearted and we have a lot of jokes and we do a lot of impressions, but this is just really a black eye on a sport and entertainment avenue that I cherish with all of the fiber of my being, because it just is disgusting. And it is a misuse of power to the worst degree. And where I'm struggling, this is truly where I'm struggling, is how does Bruce Pritchard, Triple H, how do some of these people that have been around him for so long, how can they look people in the eye and be like, I had no idea?
Or the Undertaker.
Right.
all of his closest people that
all
he's always just
people
were loyal to him. It's kind of like seeing Donald Trump whisper into Jeffrey Epstein's ear, like, that one's real hot over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just fucking gross.
Yeah.
And those two are boys too, Trump and
ironic
Vince McMahon. I mean, we don't even need to get political because who the fuck cares, honestly? But it just shows you that when you have so much money, or I don't know when like life becomes not interesting enough that you have to play these types of games with people and your own forms of entertainment, you're basically using human lives, people who are struggling and who are successful as your pawn pieces when you are worth this amount of money. And it's a sad thing, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, technology is pretty cool how you can share information very quick, but honestly, technology can bring you down just as quick as it has. It actually takes you longer to get built up with technology to the status that you are, but it can bring you down 50 times faster than it takes you to get built up to that level. I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, this is obviously a felony. There's going to be some court stuff. I mean, is he going to go to jail? Like, he should, yeah.
You would think so. I mean, what's confusing about this is it's a lawsuit from the person, the individual who, was like part of all this. And so that alone's kind of interesting. And what she's accusing him of, though, would be a felony, right? So you would have to believe there would be criminal charges coming. If history tells us anything, though, and I've kind of said this to some of the folks, listeners of the podcast, in fact, who have reached out directly, I really hope so, because I mean, at what point can at what point can you just say, well, this will just get brushed under the rug? I mean, this is, if you've seen the text messages, if you've heard the stories, I mean, enough's enough. Like, this is so over the top. It's so out there. It's in mainstream media now. So in my mind, something has to happen. Now, I say that, and then, again, I don't want to get political here, but you look at Vince's best friend, Donald Trump, right? And a lot of the things that have happened with him and sort of how those have ended in like a court situation. I mean, anything's possible. And really the biggest thing is, even if Vince does get convicted of something, or even if he does lose the lawsuit, he has enough money and enough political power to appeal it, to continue to push it out, to the point where the people who are coming after him are just like, you know what, we don't have the money to match him, or just like, this is never going to end, so let's just settle, or let's just give up. I can see one of those two things.
He should just disappear. Like, he's got all the money in the world. Why don't you just go to like a crazy, like awesome location that is off the grid, buy your own island, and just vanish into oblivion, and just don't even have a cell phone. Don't even do anything. Don't even have anybody that you can hurt. And people will respect you again, I think. Like, he just needs to like go away and just not hurt people anymore. He hurt himself by staying in the business too long, by pretending that he's not doing what he's doing. Imagine how many hours that he invests into all this stuff. And this is just one story. This is one lady, right? Or is it many women that have come out now?
Yeah, there's multiple people who have come forward, and she just happens to be one.
Do you know how much
publicly released?
Do you know how much work that takes to just be communicating and having your eyes on a screen and typing? Like, imagine the amount of characters that you're typing at somebody when you can actually be writing good stories for your wrestlers in your wrestling company than talking about some of these texts that this person is. When all these wrestlers are waiting outside of his office when they're like, yeah, I want to talk to Vince. And he's like, he's busy. He's doing too much important shit. And it's like, no, I really want to talk to him about an idea. Like, think about it. Like, Drew McIntyre, who are the people that waited outside of his office? I mean, you hear it in these things all the time. Maybe like fucking, Daddy Ass or whatever his name was. Fucking NXT 2.0, Daddy Magic, like Daddy Magic probably waited outside of Vince's office because he has the confidence and stuff like that. But I'm just like, there's tons of wrestlers that waited outside, and they're trying to feed their families. They're trying to have an honest living. They're trying to put food on the table by like, hey, I have this awesome idea for this character. If you listen to me and invest in me, I could make this a thing and we could sell a fuck ton of t-shirts. But you know what Vince is doing? He's behind his desk talking about having 3 black guys ram it up every hole and orifice on a female that is down on her luck. That's fucked up, guys. That's fucked up. Yeah.
It's messed up. I was watching one of the better stories I've heard on this. I was watching Brian Alvarez from Wrestling Observer Radio. He was speaking with someone, Lisa, I apologize, I can't remember her last name, in the UK, who was talking. She's a huge fan of professional wrestling, but also pretty knowledgeable when it comes to these kinds of cases. And she was talking a lot about this, and it's just, it's a shame. She made it so straightforward. Like, this is going to leave a black eye. And this is kind of like what you said, Mike. This is going to leave a black eye in pro wrestling. And for those of our listeners who listen to this because like, us directly, or, you just kind of want to hear like, oh, what's this podcast all about? Don't come away from this thinking that pro wrestling is this horrible, horrible industry where all these bad things happen. Keep in mind, these things do happen in many walks of life. It's unfortunate that they happen more often in pro wrestling than other places, mainly because the person who leads the largest pro wrestling promotion in the world happens to be the guy we're talking about, right? So please don't come away from this thinking that pro wrestling is just this dirty underbelly of society. It is not. It's a fun, somewhat violent, but still fun theater where you can tell stories through violence. It's really interesting in that way. So if anything, keep giving pro wrestling a chance. Keep listening to this podcast. Keep an open mind with these things.
Yeah,
Word up.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but yet on the same token, it just shows the and I think I might have said this in one of our group chats when we were talking about this, but this just shows the depth of kind of just the brainwashing is not the right word, but this mirage that the WWE has over its fans that escapes them far too far away from reality, right? Like, and that's part of their shtick is this whole entertainment kind of mirage, and
that's why monopolies should be illegal. They basically monopolized the business, and they became too big for everything, and nobody is there to hold them accountable when you can basically write your own ticket for any behavior you want to conduct in the business that you dominate. Because when you dominate that business, who's going to question you?
Mm-hmm. And the
and
whole
then
thing,
people get hurt.
The whole thing in the end is really sad for me, because I think to myself of how many people, again, guaranteed there's many people that knew exactly what was going on, never said a word, and then in the end, this comes out, and you're left thinking to yourself, like, is it really going to change? Like, is that organization going to have the courage to truly change its trajectory? And I don't know. It remains to be seen, but like you said, Matt, I do think he is a very twisted, unfortunately paranoid, very delusional type of myopic leader. They're not that uncommon. They're usually called dictators, and he operates like a dictator, an autocrat. And unfortunately, we see them in Russia, we see them in China, we see them in all kinds of places, and it's a really sad situation. But with that being said, like you said, Matt, I think the world of professional wrestling is so amazing in terms of its ability to help you escape reality, that I do hope that maybe through all this coming out and his fall from grace, that good will come out of this, and more people will feel empowered not only to provide a safer environment for wrestlers, but more importantly, to really keep the focus on the entertainment part of what they do in the ring, and not what they have to do to get ahead in a company.
Most definitely, boys. So, yeah, let's stick to the positives for the people that are in the business. The wrestlers, we're a wrestlers podcast. We're not here for the administration of it all. We are here for the people that respect the art, and the people that lace up the boots and step through those ropes. So keep supporting your local wrestlers. So we played a pretty fun game last night, because we are wrestling enthusiasts and passionate about everything and everything to do with wrestling. And Matt made this awesome game that basically put us on the spot to imitate any wrestler, to talk about any topic. And I mean, for a lot of people, that could be very hard to do. And it could have been a train wreck, but it's actually a pretty entertaining episode. I actually got a bellyache laughing so hard at some of these promos, and had to play them like loudly in my car because I wanted it. So basically, go back and listen to last week's episode if you haven't heard it.
I cannot tell. Mike, I cannot tell a lie. I did the very exact same thing you did. I listened to it on a run, and I had to stop running because I was laughing.
I did the exact same thing.
I was laughing, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Maybe it's just.
You know how good laughing is for you, though,
it's
too, boys.
The most amazing. It's amazing.
You need to laugh. You need to laugh in this life, because it's healthy. It gets your energy out, or there's science behind it. If you want a good laugh, you go back and you listen to the last week's episode, because some people laid it down, some people did not. But I hope we do that game again. It was really fun to be put on the spot like that and just see what people come up with. So, Matt, take it away, buddy. What is the results of the game?
Yeah, thanks, dude. And for those of our listeners who voted, thank you so much. We really appreciate you participating, engaging with us on social media. If you haven't heard last week's show, it's okay. Go back and listen to it. Like Gary and Mike were just saying, and I even mentioned it. It's a good one. It's a true belly buster. So, the results are in, and it looks like there's a tie for pretty much every place except for first. So we may as well just go ahead and announce the winner with 50% of the votes. The winner was the guy who talked a lot about cherry wine, Charlie Michaels.
Yeah, good for the run, good for the Royal Rumble run in. He really did. I'm gonna tell you right now, like the Rock one was so good. It was dynamic.
Yes, and Cody Rhodes. If you haven't heard last week's episode, definitely go back and check it out. You will. Are the impressions good? No, not at all. And I think that's what adds so much charm to that episode. Definitely got to go check it out if you haven't already. But congratulations, Charlie, for winning. I did mention on social media that there would be a prize that would be announced tonight. We are still working that out. So not to lead you guys on, but that'll likely be announced on next week's show. Stay tuned for more of that. That is yet to come.
Congratulations to Charlie.
I love Charlie so much because he is a purist when it comes to wrestling, and he's got deep personal thoughts about everything, and he lets it come through. And that's why I love the guy so much, is because like you get the most honest picture into what the guy is thinking, and then you just attach a wrestling accent or dialect or impression on the guy. It's perfect. So why wouldn't he win?
It was great. Yeah, no, I mean, he was by far. I mean, I wouldn't say by far. I think that I really think for each of us, there was one that really kind of was like, all right, that was pretty good. And
fuck yeah, it was not an easy thing to do.
I think Mike, I think you were the one that said this last week, and I just want to reiterate, that is not easy to do. Like that, the improvisation that's required is to actually, and then heighten it with the fact that most of these guys are doing, and women are doing these in the ring in front of thousands of people on live television. And it's like, I guess again, as a purist back in the 80s, they did not script very much. And when you listen to some of those, some of them are priceless. But and I'm somewhere in between, where I'd rather see someone be more realistic in their promo, but I can totally appreciate what they have to do and how hard they have to work to really get good mic skills, because this is not easy at all.
Well, I just want to give it up to Matt, who's pushing our limits, and I like where his head's at. Like Matt is the one that said, I'm going to make these guys impersonate a wrestler and talk about one word as that, and I'm making the rules because I'm a father of twins and what I say goes. So I think Matt is very healthy right now being a father of twins, because it's no easy thing. And he's coming up with these games and he's pushing us because he wants the best for everybody. So you know what? I'm going to do a little something different tonight. And Val Venus is going to take us out and teach us how to be Triple H. So Val, why don't you take us out and just inform the listeners on how to keep a Triple H, shall you?
Well, listeners, if you haven't listened to Keep the Kayfabe enough already, you will know that there's these 3 things you need to live by. And the Big Valboski is a big proponent of these 3 things. And it's to stay humble, stay hungry, and stay hard.
Triple H.